Welcome to Season 2 of the PPC Ponderings podcast. In this season, we're platforming people we don't personally know well, but who do know PPC well. Kirk is a big fan of making new friends, so look at these episodes as friendly chats between two new friends learning about PPC together. Today we join Kirk as he has a conversation with the ROAS Queen herself, Ana Goia. Kirk and Ana chat about key performance indicators in accounts and across verticals. Ana is quite passionate about reach and how the lack of viewability on the specific KPI is so problematic within Google. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy our conversation with Ana.
All right, Ana, it is great to meet you. I think we've connected, on social media before, so it's fun to finally put a face to the name. Where are you joining us from?
Hi, Kirk. Lovely to meet you. I'm stalking you for the last decade online. I'm joining from Bucharest, Romania.
That's amazing. Never been there. I'd love to go there.
Please come. It's a beautiful country. We have seaside, mountains, everything you need.
Oh, that's awesome.
For family, for friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. How many people live in Bucharest?
In Bucharest, officially, there are about 2 million people. Unofficially, about 5 million. A lot of students, a lot of people who work here and then commute back home.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, no, in your city, you're larger than our entire state, and we live in, I think the third largest state in the United States. So, not a lot of people. I think there's under 2 million in the whole state. So,
which state?
That's
that?
In Montana.
Montana.
Yep. So, if I recall, oh gosh, it might be fourth largest. I always forget about California. But California is really long, but Texas and Alaska beat us out for sure. So, anyways, 1 point for
Bucharest. Romania.
There you go. Exactly. Back to Bucharest. No. And then you had said in your questionnaire form, like you've lived in a few other places as well. So kind of world traveler.
Yes, I definitely lived the millennial dream. Sorry, my dog is. I was a nomad in my 20s, so I lived 1 year in France with an Erasmus scholarship. It was with my university. I didn't like it too much, although I was fluent in French. I didn't feel very welcome there. As a Romanian, there are a lot of biases that are applied there. But instead, where I found my second home, let's say, was in Czech Republic, in Prague, where even if I spoke maybe kindergarten Czech, I felt really at home and appreciated by the people.
Oh, cool. I almost made it to Prague, I think last year for some conference, but ended up not going. So still wasn't too sure about international travel and all that. But I think it was a conference in Prague, and that is another city I'd like to. I need to go on a tour of Definitely. All of Europe. I think just hit all the cities. So
just visit Bucharest first. Visit Bucharest first and then Prague, because Prague is like a movie set. It's like the number one tourist destination in the world.
Okay, I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people.
It's Little Amsterdam, Sin City. So for everything from conferences, movies, culture to underground music, you find everything.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. No, I love, and the thing is with cities too, what I really like is every city has its own flavor of just, and a lot of that comes from the history and the culture, and it's all unique. And I think if you can kind of understand that, then whatever city you're in, you can appreciate this is why it's different than that, than that city and that. But I have heard a lot of people at Prague. Everyone kind of agrees Prague is pretty nice. So.
It's the best so far in my life that I visited and lived in.
And then before we move to PPC, what do you do for fun there in Bucharest?
For fun, I spend a lot of time with my doggies on my bike in the closest park. We have a huge lake around my place, so that's a nice garden to have.
Yeah.
I travel a lot. I study a lot. I read books. I listen to podcasts. I especially love the last episode with the Google Rap. I really enjoyed the conversation between you.
Oh, cool.
A lot of audiobooks as well while I'm doing chores in the house. And that would be all, because I work a lot. So I'm working in 2 media agencies, the number 1 and number 2. And I also freelance a lot. So my work days are between 9 and 13 hours.
So that sounds pretty busy. You're in no danger of getting bored, it sounds like.
Ever. It's like the platforms change so much, like we're constantly reset to juniors. So you always
That's
have to
awesome.
learn something. Yeah.
I love meeting a fellow audiobook listener as well, because like I did a ton of reading in school and I think that almost burned me out a little bit. And then I didn't read a lot. And like I've just in the last couple of years just dove back into reading primarily because of audiobooks, because um
Me too.
so like I have the work thing, and then we have a bunch of kids, and so that takes up, both of those things take up a lot, a lot of my time. And exactly what you said is what I do. I just love when I'm doing housework around, like cleaning up the dishes, kitchen, whatever. I love like having an audiobook on while I'm doing it, and I just feel like I'm getting both done, and it's actually kind of mentally relaxing for me. So it sounds like the same for you. So yeah.
Exactly. And if I don't have a good book, because I do have the Audible subscription with 1 credit, usually that's enough for 1 month. But if I don't have a good book, I don't do chores.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
noticed that. So
do you
I'm
do
definitely
you
looking
ever
for the credits to clean my house. I'm kidding,
so
of course,
okay.
but that did happen last month.
Yeah. So with all of the languages, which one do you listen to the audiobooks in?
I definitely listen to English audiobooks because you guys are awesome in writing content, especially about marketing and business. So that's where things get invented, and we just like declinate a little bit localized.
Interesting. If a book, what would you consider your primary language that you know? Romanian?
Romanian. Romanian,
Okay.
then my second is French, third is English, and fourth is a little bit of Czech, very little bit.
Un- Unbelievable. As someone who embarrassingly only knows the one and
That's
one
the most
language,
important one.
well, no, not remotely. It's always, yeah, I'm just always so impressed when I meet someone who knows more. But
I'm
so it's
embarrassed
an
I didn't
audiobook.
learn better Czech, to be honest. I lived 5 years in Czech Republic, but I lived in this expat bubble with very international colleagues, so I wasn't forced by life, and I didn't learn it. So I should have. I had the
Gotcha.
time. Because it
Yeah, come
opened like
on,
so
your
many
fourth
other
language.
languages. Just my first.
Come on, slacking on that one, man. The fourth.
Yeah, but after
Oh,
learning French for 12 years, English for 10 years, I had like a mental blockage. I was like, I don't
yeah,
have 12 years to learn Czech. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I
Life
can
is too
appreciate
short.
that. Yeah, yeah. You're like, yeah, 3.5 is enough.
Yeah,
Well,
especially
cool.
me as a Latin, to learn through a Germanic language, English, Slavic language, Czech, it was very hard. Maybe if I would have learned it straight from Romanian, but that was hard to find in Prague. So maybe that would have
Mm,
been easier, just like I learned all the other languages. But now I'm building on top of other secondary, tertiary languages, so it's much more difficult. And also, I'm thinking about trying to learn new things, not another way of packaging things. So that was my reasoning and my lazy excuse
yeah,
to
yeah.
not learn.
No, okay. And still before we get into PPC, because now I'm super curious. And again, I'm just going to apologize about my ignorance here. So is Romanian in the Romantic language is with like French in that?
Yes, the new
Okay.
conspirations say that this is where Latin was born and then it moved
Oh,
towards the
cool.
West. But it's a
Oh, very cool.
conspiracy at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm a
We'll
big
go
fan
with
of
that.
those,
Yeah,
paperclip
yeah.
or
Hey,
not.
yeah. Speaking of conspiracy, let's get to Google now.
What about Rich
The
in Google?
classic segue. Yeah. Yeah, no. So yeah, you had a couple of things in your form about the PVC stuff that I was just super interested about. That'd be fun. So let's start. It sounds like you're really excited talking about reach. So let's start there. You have a lot of experiences working for these large agencies and working on some pretty big accounts. So you've done quite a bit with with Google over the years. So you clearly are really excited about the idea of reach in PPC. Can you define what you mean by reach, and then maybe just talk a little bit about that? Why do you like reach?
Definitely. So it all happened this year when I became really interested about the Google reach not being reported in the UI. First, because I noticed on some clients that we are spending twice the budget that we were spending last year, but we are we are generating the same number of sessions in analytics, whichever analytics, and the same amount of revenue in the back end of the website of the CMS. So we are wondering, like, where is the issue and why are the critical KPIs disappearing from the ad account? And yeah, I do have a couple of opinions, but I will wait a little bit more for my conspiracy.
No, that's totally fine. And if you won't mind, just because there's going to be a lot of like beginners here listening to podcast stuff, can you just define reach?
So in Google, reach is reported in the unique users column, and as per the Google support articles, it should be reported always for video campaigns, display campaigns, and discovery campaigns. It was never reported for search campaigns, but why not? It's not reported thus in PMAX. But I do have two situations on two different clients where I was briefed to report on last year video performance. So YouTube, Meta Video, and versus TikTok. And of course, my colleagues are comparing also with TV stats. So they're trying to, because it's video, it's kind of the same ad format, it's just a different placement, online, offline. We're trying to compare them to allocate the budget in the most efficient way for our clients, for their personas, and for their spend levels. So my task was the following. The creative team, one of the biggest in Romania as well, wanted to sign up for an award for the best creative campaign. We had we had one digital show with a huge celebrity in Romania. She's a news anchor. She's very respected, very liked. And we filmed the client with the agency, with the creative agency. They filmed 2 seasons, each with, I don't know, maybe like 8 episodes each. They had around 7-9 minutes, and they were inviting entrepreneurs in interesting industries that found success with a partnership with my client, which is a top bank. And basically, they asked me what was the reach for the video campaign that we had for 3 months, and then 3 months the second season. And I couldn't find that KPI, so I couldn't. I had to look in Meta, which Meta does report reach. And based on Meta's reach and Meta's true plays, I had the Google views. So I tried to estimate some kind of reach, to find the minimum reach between the two platforms. Like what cross-platform reach, that would be a dream. I couldn't even estimate the minimum reach per platform across the campaigns, especially in Google. And I had the same problem with LinkedIn. So that's when I realized, oh my God, the platforms are starting to hide the most critical KPI that we buy on every platform, on every medium, online, offline. How can you hide? That's what we buy. We buy reach that is more and more qualified, right? With multiple touch points, with higher frequency, with more diverse creative, better assets where you land, the landing page, the app, email. So yeah, I was wondering what's happening, because everything was happening kind of in the same time where TikTok was exploding. And first I was thinking that's why maybe the reach of the Google display and video and LinkedIn display and video have decreased so much that the platforms are hiding it. And then what does impression mean anymore if it's not based on anything that's visible, that's public? What does click mean now? What does anything mean now? Everything is an estimation, a modulation. Yeah, that now you cannot compare anything with anything, or even understand, like, do these best practices even work anymore? Like, it's very, very hard.
So you said reach is the most important KPI to you. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that? Why you place, such emphasis on that, and then some of the ways that you're kind of thinking without, having access to that directly from the platforms, kind of how you're thinking about still marketing if you don't have access to that specific KPI anymore?
Well, as I said, it wasn't a very important KPI for me because I always focused on ROAS or cost per result or volume of results. If I'm buying views, I'm looking only at the views metrics. If I'm buying traffic, I'm looking only at clicks, landing page, CPC, and so on. If I'm buying ROAS, then I look only at conversion volume, value, conversion volume, so transaction volume, conversion value, and ROAS. But as I said, on a different client, also an enterprise, but in different vertical, we had the situation where we spent this year 2 times more versus the first quarter of 2022. We achieved the same number of sessions in analytics with double the spend. And actually the AOV decreased, so the ROAS actually decreased versus last year when we were spending half. So with twice the budget, we are achieving less. We are reporting in analytics the same number of sessions. So how much did the cost per 1,000 people reach increase that the platforms are hiding it, and that even if we double the budgets, we get the same results as last year? Of course, we need to take into account the migration from shopping to PMX and so on, but that shouldn't have halved our revenue. Then what was the point of it? Like, to just destroy all the businesses that were doing fine?
Yeah, that is it.
Makes sense. It was a long
So,
train of thought.
no, yeah, that's good. And so I might have misunderstood you. Did you say that to you reach is the most important KPI, or it's not the most important?
It's the
I might
only
have.
actual KPI that we buy. We buy people's
Gotcha.
attention with a certain frequency, and then we customize it through advanced targetings. But what we're actually buying, we're buying the attention, right? The
I
reach.
got you. I gotcha.
And then we convince them through frequency and personalization of assets and segmentation of personas. But what we're buying, in my opinion, is attention on TV, on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. And I want to see how many people I'm reaching, at least inside the same platform.
Hmm.
Because we know if we try to like see the reach overall, Meta doesn't report reach, doesn't report impression on the trackers. So only using click data that we kind of have in analytics, it's moving a little bit away from that with GA4. But yeah, I definitely think we should be able, as advertisers and media buyers, to at least not estimate, report on actual reach for any campaign type, for any placement, and of course the next level will be to actually be able to report on the cross-channel reach with a platform that is third party to all the platforms, that is giving the advertiser the right information.
Yes, certainly knowable factors like that. Who are the people that my ad has reached and I have the potential to influence and market to? Like, certainly that data, it would be nice and preferable to continue seeing and being aware of, for sure.
Yeah,
And
but
so
just
the
think
new.
about my case. Like, we are trying to get an award, and me as a media buyer, I can't even say this was the Google reach. I
Yeah.
need it's to do like a three simple rule from another platform with another behavior, with other everything.
Mhm.
And the fact that in the same time, Google and LinkedIn, I don't, maybe Google wasn't reporting before, but LinkedIn during the campaign stopped reporting overall reach and started inventing these 7 days reach and 30 days reach. What does that mean? Why can't we do any granularity of data in any period and see this? Because just today,
So
my colleague, sorry, I'm just like very short. Just today, my
no, go
colleague,
ahead.
a TV media planner, showed me in the Google Ads, you need to go in the left, where, like, for me, that's the cemetery of features that you expand, and then you select video, and then you put just the month, and then you get the reach. But why isn't reach like present in any kind of report in the UI? That's my question for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Larry,
And
Sergey, and
you kind
Daniel.
of
Yeah.
addressed this already, but my next question is going to be just how have you been navigating, this change with your clients, where they maybe previously were used to hearing some level of here's who we've reached, right? So it sounds like some of that is like you're you're finding other ways to, it sounds like, to find other ways to estimate that and present that to them. Have you also had to have just direct conversations with them on this in terms of communicating this and what's changed, and how have they been taking that, if so?
Definitely, I did talk to the Google reps that service my client. They definitely said in some months there were some bugs, but this is not some months. It's every month for this client from 2022 that it's not reported unique users for video campaigns, which they should based on best practices and support articles. But the pain, nobody would care about the reach if the ROAS wouldn't have decreased so much in the last few years, right? Like a few, maybe 3-4 years ago, you had for any client at any budget a ROAS of 15, 20, with a mix of platforms, a mix of campaign types. And now you are happy if you achieve a ROAS of 5. So yeah, that's the problem. The ROAS decreased a lot after everybody early adopted PMAX and so on. It worked fine for the first 2 months, and then they changed something in the algorithm, or a lot of advertisers adopted it, that they made it maybe the worst launched product in the Google Ads history, in my opinion. It's so much lower performing than shopping, right? It's a black box. You cannot even see like report by placement of all KPIs. It's Google ecosystem together, and then they give you some websites in the report. So yeah, if the performance would have stayed at the levels that we launched PMAX last year, nobody would have, I wouldn't care about reach right now. But the fact that, yeah, that decreased by 3-4 times in the same cost, then I start thinking about all the KPIs and where it starts and why are they hiding it and why it's happening.
So I'll reveal my ignorance a little bit here as I kind of ponder this, but I'm wondering if, to your point, in removing reach from Performance Max, I wonder if part of that is because Performance Max does love to dip into like returning visitors and people, that have already come, right? And it actually could be alarming to someone to see that their reach is not as much as they would hope for with so much like remarketing visitors and that, and there could just be a lot of repeat individual users. And Google has kind of often said with PMAX, well, as long as you're hitting your performance target, your ROAS, then like everything's happy, right? And the
but
problem
when it
with
starts going down,
that's
that's
exactly right. Like that's not marketing. Like that's one of the biggest problems to me of kind of what we're talking about in terms of like when you're talking about your interest in reach. Part of what you're trying to do is not make an immediate beeline to like immediate run to ROAS or performance, because you understand, in these YouTube campaigns and these display campaigns, we're getting in front of a lot of new people and getting a lot of new eyeballs in this content. And we do want to do that profitably. We want to track that well, but over time, we can't strangle that top of that funnel. And part of that is having insight into the fact that we are, having access to as many people out there as possible, where, potentially the problem with PMAX would be it is potentially strangling the funnel by always running after people lower in your funnel. Is that kind of an accurate look at your concerns and just kind of everything about that without having reach on things like Performance Max?
Great question. So in my thinking, I would compare search campaigns with search campaigns, maybe the same campaign across different periods of time, this year, last year, month over month, week over week. So I wouldn't compare a search reach with a YouTube skippable reach. But yeah, what I've noticed in my accounts is that this year, I think there was the largest increase in CPMs and probably cost per 1,000 people reach. So it was massive. It was so big that we're seeing, in the ROAS of our clients. And I don't think it's justifiable for companies to have such a huge rate of growth at all costs. I think maybe increasing quarterly by 5-10% the cost per 1,000 people reach would be fine because they do invest a lot. They have to adapt to so many policies, so many laws. They were unprofitable for decades, right? Google, YouTube, until they really arrived at the money. So for all that we use these products for free and they gave us so much dopamine and so much serotonin, we need to pay them with data and with media budgets. But how much is too much? You know, why did the CPC increase by 58% year over year? Why? Just because we migrated to a poorer converting product that bundles everything together in a logic that we don't understand, or it's not really what we're hearing from the Google reps? Because the engineers are changing all the time, right? They're adapting. We're seeing with GA4 how many new features, how they change the column names. We are trying to build reports on top, and we always have to reconstruct the connectors between. So why increase so much every year? So let's increase 5%, 10% every quarter, and everybody would be fine. But let's not double the CPC.
Yeah, certainly, and that just makes it a challenge too, as businesses are trying to figure out what and how to budget and to do that well when it's kind of a moving target. So,
sure, one of my wish lists would be one of my wishes actually would be to be able to buy the same KPIs in every platform, the main critical ones: cost, landing page views, clicks doesn't mean anything anymore. Transactions or leads, qualified leads for lead generation, views, impressions, reach. These 5 or 6 or 7 KPIs that I enumerated, I want to buy as a media buyer, as an advertiser from any platform that appears. So let's stop inventing KPIs that don't mean anything, interactions and so on. Clicks, all clicks, link clicks, landing. So let's focus on one KPI that is comparable between the platforms. And yeah, a little bit less grid, and for the best performing products to be pushed so aggressively on users and advertisers after a huge round of testing. And to make sure that everybody wins in the ecosystem: the client, the agency, and the platform. Because if only the platform wins, all the budgets will go back to TV, and we did nothing. It was for nothing the last decade.
You're echoing a conversation that I just had a couple weeks back when I went to Mountain View and sat down with some Googlers there, where we chatted a bit about that, about the need for just as much as possible putting advertisers, like yourself, together with Googlers who, like Google engineers, the people actually making the platform changes, and not just simply various middle tiered of people who kind of like help with the different communication between the levels, which right now, because of the system, they're very important and needed, but also that can sometimes get in the way of just like having the people doing the work with the people changing the product. Like, sometimes the telephone game, I don't know if you've ever heard of the telephone game, but that can start to happen, I think, sometimes, where this person will say one thing, into the ear of the other. It's a game like kids play. And
yes.
Someone will say into the ear, and then by the time it gets to the other person, it's like way different. And so
I actually listened to that episode, and I really enjoyed it with the Google
cool.
rep, right?
It
was really cool.
Yeah.
It was very diplomatic, but it was also, you touched some very good points, you and him.
Oh, the one with Ben Kruger. Yeah. I was referring
with Ben Kruger,
else,
the first
that
episode.
One too. Yeah.
So basically, anyway. I think you mentioned that in that episode as well, that maybe it's wrong that salespeople from the ad platforms are talking to hands-on media buyers. They should be talking with the agency C-level or the in-house C-level, and we as media buyers should talk only to ad ops from Google, teams that with us together, they assume some kind of North KPI for the account, and together we deliver it. So a little bit of development from their side, a little bit of insight from our side, like the plan. It should be different people talking to different people, because in the case of PMAX, salespeople pushed this product directly on media buyers. Media buyers, okay, we want to be early adopters and benefit from the huge ROAS and revenue and volume. But that didn't last too much. So now what, are we gonna just go back to shopping? Or splitting the campaigns per placement, or maybe ideally it would be somewhere in between those two scenarios. But yeah, I don't think media buyers necessarily need to talk to salespeople. That's two levels, and then the media buyer with the C-level should again align and decide together how to proceed. And I think this was also your conclusion in that episode.
Yeah, certainly something needs to change at some point. And that, at least that makes for no lack of boredom in our lives as PPCers. So cool. Anna, it was just a pleasure to meet you, to record your thoughts. Thanks so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. Where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on roasqueen.com. So I definitely was a much bigger queen a few years ago, where I was delivering much more bigger ROAS. But now I'm delivering the maximum possible ROAS per industry. So yeah, that's still relevant, let's say. I just want to say one more thing. Like, if the platforms are listening, who am I to request my
You're the ROAS. You're the ROAS queen. Of course.
I mean, I'm doing this for 13 years. I've been more loyal to the ad platforms than maybe to the companies that I worked in, because definitely the platforms gave me indirectly, they gave me a life and money to spend and so on, indirectly, right? Through the companies that I helped. So I really do love these platforms, and I plan on having this career until the end of my life. Hopefully they won't automate us away completely. And I'm just thinking about the risks if everything goes as it's going now. I'm just afraid that it will destroy everything from online advertising to internet, and we're just going to move on blockchain or something else and abandon everything that we've invested so much of our time. And even if we move to blockchain, ideally we would take these learnings that we had of these platforms that basically did a 180 degrees pivots on their initial USPs. And hopefully the next platforms on the next infrastructure won't repeat the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would completely agree. Like, I've tried to bring this up before with Google, but like rebuilding for Google trust with their advertisers is I think it's at a really crucial stage right now. And what I have heard from Google primarily is this, like, you'll trust us when we give you good performance, and performance is, ROAS or return or that sort of thing. And I think that is oversimplifying like how people work and do business, because, some of that being, what happens when something happens where performance might struggle, and yet that doesn't mean that necessarily at that time, for those few months of that performance struggle, that moving all money away from Google is actually the right play for someone. And yet when you have increasingly built your platform and your communication with advertisers, where trust means just simply just trust us to get you the revenue, like it all hinges on that. It's all dependent on that, as opposed to more like, I just think, and it sounds like this is where you're at with how you understand marketing as a big picture, like big M marketing, like what we're trying to do in terms of, buying, reach with individual users and that sort of thing, across any channel. And the more that we actually learn and do all of those things well as be able to trust the ad platforms in terms of the data they're giving us and have insight that makes sense into how systems work and this sort of thing, then when performance does have struggles, because it always does, that helps navigate through those performance struggle time, because you actually have trust in marketing, not simply hey, now that this channel isn't giving me a return, I'm done with it. There might be something there. So cool. Thank you so much.
Definitely. And just final thought. So basically, before, like 50 years ago, right, people were spending and they were saying that I'm wasting half of my budget, I just don't know which half, right? So half was a waste. So they were putting maybe they were putting $1 and getting $2 back. Right now, we are a little bit unhappy that we put $1 and we get 4 or 5 at big volumes. That adds, but it's just
Yeah.
because we were presented with this, with this world where we really put $1 and we got 20 back.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because it's like 5 times less, it's a huge shock for us. But also, let's not forget Google Ads and Meta Ads are the 2 biggest revenue engines. But ideally, they would also listen to us, the media buyers that are literally spending decades in their platforms and plan to continue doing so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's 4 or 5 return is because Google has predominantly been the demand capture side of things rather than demand creation, which is totally fine.
Also.
That's great. That's PPC. Search intent. Search intent means someone needed to be aware of something before they knew enough to search for it, and then they find you. It doesn't. I know for all the people who are yelling at their headphones right now. Well, yes, there's also some demand creation in PPC. Okay, yes, I give you that. For the most part, it's largely demand capture. Yeah, you're capturing the demand
video, maybe.
from the other marketing. And the thing is, demand capture is always going to have a higher directly tracked ROAS. That's just the way it works. That doesn't mean you should stop demand creation. I mean, again, marketing 101. And I would agree completely with that. Like, the more that we in this industry have kind of had the expectation that we should be getting 4, 5, 6x from stuff, it's tempting to just always be feeding into that bottom funnel, into that demand capture, more so than realizing the importance of the demand creation side and how do you manage that and how do you do that well.
Exactly, and there are more advertisers, more platforms, and the time is limited. We're not more than maybe a couple of years before. So behavior changes, platforms change, but how are we slowing a little bit down the pace so that we don't get reset every year to junior level and we have to learn GA4, we have to learn, GDPR, how to do the form. That was crazy. Then ATT policy, like it's the pacing is so fast that it's really exhausting. It's exhausting. We are now in the situation where we cannot even QA a pixel or know is it properly recording. You're comparing to the backend of the website in transactions. You're comparing to the ad platform, universal, GA4. Nothing means anything anymore, and nothing is comparable to anything anymore. And I think there's a huge risk for the whole industry if people like me, like you, who literally have spent the last 10, 15 years in the platforms, are flagging this huge risk that we see.
Yep. Alrighty. Thanks so much, Anna. We'll look forward to seeing you around on Twitter and LinkedIn. And have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, Kirk. It was lovely chatting with you.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Stay tuned for the next episode of the PPC Ponderings podcast to keep learning PPC. If you are a person with a brilliant PPC tactic that the world needs to know about, please apply to be a podcast guest online at zatomarketing.com/ponderings-guest. If you are enjoying these podcasts, please make sure to leave us a review on whatever your preferred podcast provider is. But in the meantime, may the auctions be ever in your favor.